Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our April Connecticut ITE New England Section ITE meeting. My name is Mark Carlino. I think we've got a good meeting put together for you today. Hopefully this is one of the last few we're going to be doing virtually, and being virtual will probably have a few hiccups, but I'm glad everybody is here to join us. Just as a quick run through of the agenda, we've got a few business items to hit up front. We're going to be giving our annual awards today, and then we've got an exciting panel to discuss pedestrian related safety issues that we're looking at across the state of Connecticut. And so with that, I'd like to start us off by welcoming Jennifer Conley from the New England section chapter of ITE. And Jennifer, I want to give you the floor first to start off with a welcome and any announcements you may have from the New England section.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mark. I too am very sad that we are not able to meet in person. One of the things I love being on the New England board is being able to move from state to state and see everybody at these meetings. We had our board meeting today, virtually, obviously, and just finished that up. And I've seen a number of the board members are on the call, which is great. A few announcements I'd love to share. Things are moving along with the strategic plan. I know I had introduced the strategic plan to your chapter leadership, and hopefully things have gotten disseminated to all of you. We're really working to try to engage younger members, and one of the things we're thinking as we come out of COVID is how to continue to serve our members. As was pointed out, this meeting has a great attendance, and hopefully in the future we can keep kind of the virtual options open for those folks who aren't able to travel to meetings, and to serve another part of our membership in that way, to keep people engaged even though they might not be able to come to things in person because of the time or the travel required. So those are a couple of the things that we're talking about. One of the things that is really important to us is really engaging those younger members. We have the Emerging Professionals group. They get together on the third Tuesday of every month, and this is professionals, I would say, with less than 10 years of experience, who are newer to ITE and are using it as an opportunity for networking with each other, but then also with some mentoring, because they tend to invite a guest speaker. And unless I'm mistaken, I think Matt Skelly was a guest speaker at a recent event for them. Thank you, Matt. They're a great group. They're very energetic, and I think it's a really nice thing for them to have this opportunity, even online, to start doing some networking, so that when they come to real events, they'll be able to see a familiar face and not be intimidated when they come into a room with some of us more seasoned professionals. So that is something that if you are a younger member, please feel free to reach out to either your Connecticut leadership or to me directly. I'm happy to put you in touch with that. Those meetings are, as I said, every single month. They get together on the third Tuesday. I think it's right at 5 o'clock. So that's a great thing to put on your calendar. Otherwise, again, since we can all attend meetings anywhere, a few things that are coming up is the Vermont chapter is having a roundtable on May 6th. New Hampshire ITE is having an event on the 12th to talk about changes to the MUTCD, which I know is something on some of our minds. Also, we have the Northeastern District meeting. That's a 3-day meeting that's always held in May, and this year it's virtual. And if you do really want to, they go over a number of technical topics. It's a great event, and it is free to members this year. So it certainly is something that you should think about checking out and joining for a few of those technical sessions on the topics that interest you. Going forward, there's also on June 8th, a joint meeting between the Mass and Rhode Island chapters about the systemic approach to safety, looking at their safety programs moving forward. So those are a couple of the things that are going on kind of around the region. Myself and the other members of the board that are on the call are really happy to be here with you in Connecticut. And if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them about what we're thinking about moving forward with the New England board.
Thank you, Jen. That's a great update, and it shows how much that the New England section is doing and engaged in. A lot of those same issues you talk about are the things that we're working on in Connecticut, especially engaging our younger members. That's one of the challenges. And I think we're all excited that once we get out of the COVID situation, we're going to have a lot more events. We're going to be able to engage and really get in person. And I know at the DOT, we hired a lot of younger new engineers right out of college, just as COVID was hitting. And it's been such a challenge to get them ingrained into the culture of the work life, having to be remote. And that's going to be one of the benefits of getting back in person is to continue on that training program, because obviously so much of the development of the profession is not just learning the book smarts and the work, but it's really engaging with your coworkers and expanding that way. A few things I'd like to mention about the Connecticut chapter. One, a planning session is continuing for the joint Connecticut Society of Civil Engineers and the Connecticut chapter of ITE for the upcoming golf tournament. That's our scholarship tournament where we take in most of our funding for the scholarship program. That's going to be held later this year. We're still working on certain dates and looking at when that's going to be. Last year it was held in October. That was our 25th annual event, and it was a great success. We had a great day last October. Couple of other things, and Jen, if you did wanted to join in on the topic is OneITE. We know that's been a transition that's been happening across the different levels of the organization. The biggest component of it that's happened with the Connecticut chapter has been the transition of the membership and the dues. And one of the big benefits of the OneITE element that ITE International has offered has been this expansion of membership services and elements. That transition is going to be continuing through the New England section. Is there anything, Jen, that we could tell our members here in Connecticut of how that may start filtering down, or the opportunities here in Connecticut?
It's not something we've made any decisions about, but one of the things, we have talked to each of the state chapters about is that we have the opportunity, if we're interested in reorganizing, and instead of it being an organization that, starts from the international level, works its way down to the district, works its way to our section, to the New England section, and then works its way to your chapter, that maybe some of the chapters might reorganize and become individual sections. And that's something that we have the potential to do if we're interested in. And what it does is it takes out maybe one more layer between kind of the top of the organization and the state chapters, as we are one of the few areas that still has an organization via state chapters. Most folks just belong to at the section level. And our sections, including our chapters, including Connecticut, is as big as the number of sections in the rest of the organization. So it is something that we've introduced as an idea. We haven't made any decisions. I kind of wanted each of the chapters to think about what is the best move for them, and then maybe we'll get back together with the chapter presidents and kind of start talking about how it is we want to organize moving forward. But a lot of the idea is, if you were to serve on a board at your local Connecticut chapter, and then maybe move your way up to the section chapter, and then move your way up to the district chapter, you really, by the time you could become part of the international board, you've really given a lifetime to the organization. And sometimes that's more of a time commitment than we're willing to make. For example, I don't know that I'm going to be working for long enough that I could work my way up now to the international board of directors. So it is just something to think about, kind of making that more direct connection between members and the international organization. And they have helped us with a number of things, including organizing events, our annual meeting. They were very supportive during, and I think we're trying to create a stronger relationship with the international organization moving forward.
Thank you, Jennifer. And then obviously, as those decisions are being made, Connecticut's going to be in the mix of that, and we'll be having discussions with our chapter members and getting a lot of input on that area.
Yeah, I think it's just really important. I know folks hear about change and it's a concern. This is nothing that's coming top down. We're not being made to do anything. So it's really, it'll be driven by us and our individual chapters, what we want to do moving forward.
Thank you. So thank you, Jennifer.
You're welcome.
I just wanted to make a couple of reflections on this past year as president. Obviously, having it be entirely remote and having all of our meetings other than our golf tournament be something that we've had to do online here, it has been a challenge for everyone. I want to commend the fellow members of the board here for everything that they've done, starting with Matt Skelly. Matt, you've been a mentor, a friend to me, and have provided so much leadership over the past couple of years, and especially this year with all the transitions we've been doing. I wanted to thank you for that. Mark Vertucci, Carl Dusler, and Colleen. It's been an honor to work and serve with you. We've done a lot of good things to shore up, I think, our finances. We've said a lot of the fundamental things that had been some questions coming into this year, and I think we're going to be leaving it in good shape for the next year going forward. One of the things that I am most excited about that I think we've done, and this is a little bit of a shout out to Kevin Burnham for reaching out to me to get me involved a couple of years ago, is we've been able to get the engineers at Connecticut DOT a little more involved in the organization. I think it's a benefit to the Connecticut chapter and to the Connecticut DOT if we can get that relationship active and going. I think it's important for the membership, the professional engineers in Connecticut, to have an understanding of the direction we're going in the engineering division with some of the major elements of traffic signals in other areas, and certainly the engineers at DOT are constantly learning from the professionals out on the private sector. And as long as we can continue and expand that dialogue, I think Connecticut as a state and the services we bring to our residents are going to benefit from that type of a relationship. So I'm hoping that that's going to be able to continue. And with that, I want to thank everyone for all of their support over this past year. If we move on to the next section of the agenda, that will be our treasurer's report. Carl?
Great, thanks, Mark. I just wanted to give you all a quick summary of our chapter financials. As many of you know, our chapter was the victim of an email scam in late 2018 where we lost approximately $9,000. But I'm happy to report that as of now, we've fully recovered, both in part due to the leadership of Kevin Burnham, Matt Skelly, Mark Carlino, and Mark Vertucci in 2019, and also the overwhelming support we've received from ITE Northeastern District, New England section, and our friends at ITS and WTS. At the 2019 ITE CT annual meeting, our checking account balance was approximately $5,000. A year later in 2020, it was approximately $11,600. And as of today, that account is at $12,241.64. In addition, this year we opened a savings account, which has an additional $2,000 to appropriate funds specifically for our scholarships. This was part of the plan related to reducing our risk as a financial entity and making sure that we can continue to award scholarships, something that we feel is an important part of our mission. That all translates to an increase of our funds this year of 22.8%. This was a rather unusual year financially as expenses have been very low. We're looking forward to 2021 to use our resources to best serve our membership in the state of Connecticut. And with that, I'm sending it over to Matt Skelly.
Thanks, Carl. Great report and great segue to the scholarship program. As the immediate past president, I had the privilege of collecting scholarship applications, getting them ranked by some of the other past presidents of the chapter, and assisting in selecting a winner. The other past presidents who rank the scholarships are asked to review them based on commitment to transportation engineering, commitment to Connecticut and or neighboring states, academic achievement, and financial need. We received 6 complete scholarship applications this year, all really great applications, and it was in very competitive year, several of the past presidents remarked that there were really no easy decisions in ranking them this year. So I think we're very happy with the selection that was made, and we certainly believe this is a super strong candidate. We would I'll just call out, this is a student who's kind of one of those does it all kind of people. She's got kind of like a ton of extracurriculars. I'm not going to read them all off, but a lot of work experience as well for a younger student, and I think we're all really impressed with her here. So I'd like to congratulate, and you can also see Carl's message in the chat here. We're trying to make this not a little more personal. So if everybody wants to unmute and give a round of applause to our scholarship winner this year, Aryanna Fontanez from UConn.
Woohoo!
And I think Aryanna is on. If you want to unmute and say thanks or just wave, either's fine.
Yeah, thank you guys. I really appreciate it. I didn't think I was gonna get it. This was a wonderful surprise, and I really appreciate it. Really needed it, especially with a single mom. So this is gonna alleviate a lot of the stress. So thank you guys. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for applying. And with that, I will be turning it over to Mark Carlino, I think, to get into our chapter awards.
Thank you, Matt. And so the excitement continues. So congratulations, Aryanna. For our first award, this is our Service to Chapter Award, and it's for outstanding service, constant dedication, and professional contribution to the Connecticut chapter of the Institute of Transportation Engineers. And with this award, I'd like to give it to our past president, Matt Skelly. Everyone unmute and let's give him some round of applause.
This one was pretty expected. So thanks, Mark.
Yeah, it's all right. But we gotta drum it up a little bit here.
Appreciate it.
No, Matt, personally, thank you very much for all the service you've given over the last couple of years, and especially this past year. You've remotely and traveling, you've been back and forth a number of times to do whatever it takes for this chapter. And it wouldn't be the same without the effort you've put into it. So thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And I feel very confident that we're leaving it in good hands here.
Carl, did you have I just don't want to cut you off. Did you have visions of these nice plaques that we're giving everybody, or not something queued up?
Just give me one moment and I'll have them.
Yeah, I knew he had something figured out here. He actually did large cutouts of me and with everybody that he's going to put up in front of the screen there, showing these things being handed out. Let's see if he comes back. They did this at the Academy Awards the other night too.
Dramatic pause, that's all.
Right.
But they weren't in somebody's bedroom.
You don't know that.
Looks great.
There
Very
you go.
good.
Thanks, Carl.
It's going to probably go from one bedroom to the other, right, Matt?
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, for the next award, this is the 2020 Transportation Achievement Award. And for this one, this is for someone who needs no introduction. He's worked tirelessly for this chapter for pretty much his entire professional career. And with it, I'm hoping he's going to turn on his camera. The 2020 Transportation Achievement Award goes to Joseph C. Balskus. Everybody on mute. Joe's being recognized for his many years of dedicated and selfless service to the transportation engineering profession and the Institute of Transportation Engineers, We are grateful for Joe's longstanding commitment to excellence in our professional organization. Joe, congratulations.
Well, I'm shocked. I'm shocked. I really am. I was trying to, who's it going to be? So thank you, everyone. I very much appreciate it. And wow, I'm at a loss of words, believe it or not. Thank you. I thought I was a has-been. Thank you. And the chapter's doing great. Great leadership, Mark, by you and everyone else. And looking forward to staying involved, for the next 20 years. So thank you very much, everyone. I really appreciate it. I'm shocked.
Congratulations, Joe. The next award is the Herbert S. Levinson Transportation Leadership Award. And for this award, we are going to give it to two individuals that have had a very long career at the Connecticut Department of Transportation and have had a very meaningful impact on elements of the transportation industry that I think go unnoticed many times. This award is going to David Sawicki and James Jurczyk, who have worked collectively in the Office of State Transportation Administration for many, many years. Dave's been the executive director since 2008. Jim Jurczyk has been with the Department of Transportation for 2 weeks shy of 37 years. Jim just retiring in April, and Dave as well. And we want to recognize you for your many years of dedicated service to Connecticut's transportation industry. Congratulations, Dave and Jim. Please feel free to show your cameras and to say something.
Good job, guys. Great job.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, Jim.
We can.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I had troubles. I had to try to get it. I actually got it on my phone. So thank you very much. It's an honor. It's an honor to receive the award. And it's been a pleasure. I know I've worked with a lot of you guys over the years. And it's really been a pleasure, working with you all.
I'd like to echo, Jim's thoughts. It's been a long, gratifying career working, at DOT, and we've surely worked with, many of you on a lot of projects, and we've enjoyed working with many of you. Joe Balskus, not so much, but the rest of you, we enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you.
Dave and Jim, it's not going to be the same without you, and we hope to carry on the tradition of professionalism, courtesy, and just your dedication to the industry that you've led. You've trained a lot of young engineers, and we hope to continue in that footsteps.
No, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Words. Yep.
Luck with everything. We're going to move on to the next section of the agenda, which is our election results.
No, not so fast. Not so fast, Mark.
Okay, good.
We got one more award, and I would like to present it to you. This year's President's Award. Personally, it's been a pleasure for me working with you on the board, Mark, these past 2 years. I think ITE Connecticut has really benefited from having your expertise, and as you mentioned in your own remarks, I think you've really done a great job at increasing DOT membership at our meetings and also getting DOT staff involved in our meeting programs, such as having Garrett here today, and the great presentation we got from Matt Bloom and Jay Lockaby in January, where they're talking about the Adaptive Signals Project and the Turnpike. But it's really a great partnership that ITE Connecticut and Connecticut DOT have formed here over the past year, thanks largely to you, Mark. So really looking forward to having you remain on the board this upcoming year as past president, and hopefully we can do a lot more great things. So I'll just read the plaque here. ITE Connecticut Chapter 2020 President's Award to Mark Carlino in appreciation for outstanding service as president of the Connecticut Chapter of the Institute of Transportation Engineers. Congrats, Mark.
Thanks, Mark. It's been an honor to work with everyone. So now we're on to election results. Thank you. I'm going to maybe turn for a little bit of help from Colleen to see if we might have the election results. Sorry, guys, I'm talking and I've been muted. So
Sorry, I did that instead of muting
Oh.
myself. So we do have the results and I sent it in an email. I don't know how we're supposed to do this virtually. Am I allowed to announce them?
I guess officially I just found the email, so thank you for the.
You can announce them, Colleen.
Go ahead, Nicole.
Go for it.
So do we go in order or we just say the last one?
No, go in order from president right down.
Okay.
A lot of suspense. Love it.
Feel it building.
Just have to make sure I get the right winners for president, you know. Okay, suspense. Winner, your choice for immediate past president is Mark Carlino. Choice for president, Mark Vertucci. Unanimous vote for vice president, Carl Dusler. Choice for treasurer, Colleen Jost. And choice for secretary is Jay Lockaby. Congratulations.
Congratulations, everyone.
Congratulations to all the winners. Mark, I guess the reins are yours. Take it away.
Oh, already? Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think yet. Well, we're going to introduce I think we're going to go into the roundtable discussion now. So I would like to turn it over to Rich Armstrong, who is going to be moderating the event today and introducing our panelists. So I'll turn it over to Rich.
Okay, thanks. Good afternoon, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Rich Armstrong and I'm with GM2 Associates. Prior to joining GM2, I had a 34-year career with Connecticut DOT. So today's topic, improving pedestrian safety and preventing traffic fatalities, is one everyone in this session is naturally very interested in. Safety is always front and center in our project planning and our project designs. And so this discussion is about recent trends and strategies surrounding safety issues. In the past few decades, the auto industry has made great strides in improving motorist survivability when involved in crashes. But what advances from an infrastructure perspective have we made toward improving safety in our transportation corridors? We have three distinguished panelists. Today, I'll introduce them shortly. Each of them will make about a 15-minute presentation. We'll pause after each presentation so that the panel can have some discussion. I might ask a few questions of them before moving on to the next presentation. After the third presentation, we'll have some audience Q&A and comments. So what I'd like to have you do, if you have a question or a comment, simply type your name in the chat box. And then either I or Carl will call each of your each name going down the list. Hopefully we'll have enough time for everybody. You can then unmute yourself and then speak directly to the panel. Try to make it a little more interactive rather than me reading out the questions. So otherwise, please keep your mics muted. So I'm going to introduce our guest panelists. Garrett Eucalitto is a Deputy Commissioner for the Department of Transportation. Garrett previously served as Transportation Program Director at the National Governors Association in Washington, D.C. He has also held the position of Undersecretary for Comprehensive Planning and Intergovernmental Policy at Connecticut's Office of Policy and Management, and spent 6 years in Washington on the staff of former Senator Joe Lieberman as his legislative assistant. Garrett holds a BA from the College of the Holy Cross and an MA from Boston University, a native of Torrington. Garrett currently lives in New Haven. Howard Weissberg is the Public Works Director for the City of Meriden. Howard got his BS in Civil Engineering from Syracuse University and his MBA from the University of Maryland. He started his career in Maryland working for the State Highway Administration and the Anne Arundel County Bureau of Highways, an area south of Baltimore. Between the years 2009 and 2011, he served as Deputy Director of Public Works for the City of New Haven, after which he became the Associate City Engineer at the City of Meriden before assuming his current role. And Nat Gale. Nat Gale is the Director of Operations at the City of Hartford, the city in which he grew up. Nat is a leader in public and private sector management and operations with a focus on transportation, long-range planning, and urban design. He specializes in understanding organizational behavior, leading systems and culture change, and managing crises. Nat prides himself in growing and cultivating multidisciplinary teams, implementing complex budgets, and financing and policy development. On projects, Nat specializes in taking high-level planning concepts and developing a participatory design process that results in rapid implementation and seamless operations. He is known for his project management experience, attention to detail, and leadership development. So thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. And Carl, I think you're going to manage advancing the PowerPoint slide. So Garrett, if you wouldn't mind going first, I think this is your presentation.
Sure.
And I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Rich. And thank you to all of you for inviting me to participate today. Obviously the least qualified person on this entire Zoom call today, the non-engineer. So appreciate your willingness to have a liberal arts poli-sci major here today to talk about safety. But as you know, Mark Carlino probably has talked quite a bit about, pedestrian safety issues are key for us at the Department of Transportation. We're having a sea change in our department to focus on this. And so what you see here on the screen right now is a image of a report that we issued in January of 2021. So if you go, this slide right here, when we looked back, even during the middle of 2020, we were looking at the data that was coming into the department. We had our continuous count stations tracking the vehicles on the roadway, and we saw how low traffic was during the peak of the lockdown in March and beginning of April. But we also saw speed data that was being collected, and the speeds that we were seeing was frankly terrifying when you think about how fast people were traveling on our roadways. Through the work of our staff in the Policy and Planning Bureau and others throughout the department, we published that data, and it's still posted. It's still being collected and posted on our website at the department. But the data there you see is the fatalities, and we just did a 5-year look back. But 2020, if you go back even further, if you go back 10 years, 2020 was the worst year in a decade in terms of fatalities on a roadway, and especially when you look at the pedestrian fatalities. So we responded in a few ways. First, we charged our team at the DOT to have a real introspective look at what do we want to do to improve pedestrian safety in Connecticut. And that was resulted in the report that was on the cover of this slide, the first slide. We came forward with legislation, and we also came forward with new budgetary priorities that the governor included in his budget. So I'll touch on those 3 things. The first I'm going to touch on is the pedestrian safety strategy that we published in January. So that document was published in January. It had 4 major components: focused on speed, focused on crosswalks, intersections, and streets, focused on public awareness, education, training, and focused on integrated safety program. Go on the next slide. So speed, don't need to reiterate what all of you already know, but the faster vehicles traveling, the more likely it is the pedestrian who's hit is going to die as a result of that crash. So the DOT staff came forward with multiple solutions. We wanted to introduce legislation that would allow municipalities to set the speed limits instead of having Dave and Jim and OSTA have to decide every single speed limit request in the state. Letting municipalities make that determination through an engineering study. And that's a key component that we have required in the legislation we propose on the municipally owned roads. We also proposed legislation that would allow the creation of pedestrian safety zones in community centers. So areas where there's going to be a high level of pedestrian activity, letting the speed limit be set even lower than the base level that would be allowed across the state. We propose that you have before and after studies to test the effectiveness of these pedestrian safety zones. As they're going to be new to Connecticut, we want to see what the efficacy of those zones. We proposed a new speed management training program for municipal officials. And we are proposing to do a study to identify opportunities to lower speeds on our state routes that go through community centers. Next slide. And I should point out, one of the leaders on this initiative was Tom Maziarz, who retired as our Bureau Chief of Policy and Planning last year. Tom was a driving force in this whole report. And even after he retired, he remained on staff as a temporary worker to help us finish this report and pull together these strategies. His passion really helped all of our staff think critically about how we can achieve this. So the next component was crosswalks, intersections, streets. And I know this is something that Mark Carlino is passionate about. It's something that he's talked to me quite a bit about, and the importance of having clearly visible markings for pedestrians and for drivers to be able to see that. So our report looks at ways you can improve those crosswalks for pedestrian safety, upgrading your signalized intersections, and beginning to implement road diets more effectively across the state. And we've done a lot of speaking engagements recently with constituent groups talking about these opportunities to make livable, walkable, and bikeable communities. And we use a lot of the municipal examples that have been rolled out as examples for other municipalities to replicate in their communities. Next slide. Public awareness, education, training. So this is a key part. If we're able to pass the legislation to make those changes that we're seeking, education is going to be key for us to educate drivers on how to better watch out for pedestrians, better watch out for other vulnerable users, and to make sure that they're being respectful and safe with their speeds in those community centers, in those pedestrian safety zones. It's really important for us to continue to do the outreach that we're doing through the Watch for Me CT campaign. We partner with the Connecticut Children's Medical Center to stand up this program. Connecticut's Highway Safety Office, run by Joe Cristalli in our Policy and Planning Bureau, is the lead on this initiative. Next slide. We're also proposing an integrated safety program. So this one is pretty exciting for us, talking about opportunities for to do safe systems principles and for our agency to adopt towards zero deaths as a policy. So we're proposing in our plan to take a look at the safe systems approach that I know ITE National has done a lot of reports on this. Our staff want to take a look at that and see how that can be incorporated into our agency. Also looking at towards zero deaths as a policy for our state and incorporating it into the highway safety improvement plan for our agency. Next slide. So want to touch on a few more things. After we did that pedestrian safety report, we also went back and looked at how can we improve our budget proposal. So the way budget works in Connecticut, our agency prepares a request that we give to the Governor's Office of Policy Management, which is the state budget office. They then pick it apart, either include some portions of it or not include portions of it, and then pass it along to the governor for recommendation for in his budget, which he then gives the legislature. That's the point we're at now, where it's in the legislature, it's being considered, and we're hopeful that a lot of our proposals will be incorporated. But one of those proposals is we wanted to continue the community connectivity grant program, We've had 3 rounds already. We have awarded 85 or 90 grants under the program, I think $30 million. We're proposing to make this program permanent and to expand it to $12 million per year. We also are continuing the LOTSIP program. We're continuing to do the ADA curb ramp replacement program. The governor's budget has proposed an increase in our traffic signal improvement program. Governor Lamont is very, very excited by traffic signal modernization. He asks lots of questions about that. And continuing to do unsignalized pedestrian crossing upgrades. Next slide. So this is the proposed legislation currently before the House in the General Assembly. It came out of the Transportation Committee. Representative Lamar from New Haven is the champion on this issue. He took many pieces of our proposed legislation and incorporated it into his own bill, which is House Bill number 5429. What we proposed was, as I mentioned earlier, allowing local control of speed limits, establishing pedestrian safety zones. We proposed to expand when drivers must yield to pedestrians in uncontrolled crosswalks. So no longer requiring the pedestrian to enter into the crosswalk to require the driver to yield, but just signaling your intent. We did propose clarifying how far back from a mid-block crosswalk a parked vehicle must be to ensure that car won't block a driver's view of pedestrians entering that crosswalk. Unfortunately, that did not make it into the final legislation that was reported out of committee, but we have had conversations with Representative Lamar. He wants to continue to look at that in the future, in the next session, because we know it is a hazard for pedestrians that may have to step out in front of those vehicles before the driver knows that they're waiting to cross. We also proposed establishing an infraction of dooring. So opening your door without looking and hitting a pedestrian or a biker. Connecticut does not have a dooring law today, so that is included in Representative Lamar's bill. He also has proposed additional pieces, which we did not include, but we're pretty supportive of the establishment of a statewide Vision Zero Council. We think that's a fantastic idea to highlight the importance of safety in our state. He also has proposed automated traffic enforcement in school zones and in other areas with large numbers of pedestrians, as well as in highway work zones. Next slide. So it wouldn't be an opportunity for me to speak if I didn't talk about some of the other opportunities to improve safety and transportation in our state. So one of those pieces is through the Transportation and Climate Initiative. This program would reduce carbon emissions in the transportation sector by 26% over the next 10 years by auctioning off allowances for those carbon credits. And through the auction proceeds, Connecticut would generate $1 billion over a 10-year period to reinvest back into clean transportation. And this is a little a game piece of what I try to talk about to the public about how those proceeds could be invested. Talking about roundabouts and traffic signal modernization, bike and ped safety improvements. Each community is going to be different in what their needs are to help reduce emissions in their community. And a lot of that is going to be on those that can help reduce idling, improve traffic flow, make it safer to walk and bike in their communities. Not to mention the opportunities for public transit as well. And I think that should be it. So that is my presentation. Happy to take questions or wait till the end.
Thanks, Garrett. Yeah, this is Rich. And great presentation. A lot of interesting initiatives moving forward. A few things came to mind when you were talking. I heard about lowering speed limits in certain zones, I guess. So I'm wondering about enforcement, because as everybody knows, you know, speed limits are not always followed, and you really need the enforcement element to make those as powerful as they can be. Was there any discussion about how do we, you know, enforce the speed limits, especially if we're going to move to lower them further than where they are?
There were, you know, it's a balance, I think, for a lot of the public policy folks, where we're having a a reckoning in our country right now about the use of police force to in traffic stops. And there's discussions at the legislature about maybe moving some of the current primary offenses down to secondary offenses. So you can't be pulled over for covering your license plate as a primary offense to pull someone over, things like that. But speeding is something that continues to be, you need to have some form of enforcement. Either in all the studies that we looked at in the department, lowering the speed limits to 20 miles per hour or 25 miles per hour, you need to have an alternate outside pressure, either enforcement of those speeds through police presence or through automated enforcement, or making some structural changes to the infrastructure that would encourage reduction of speed by the drivers. I know the city of New Haven has talked about using speed tables in some areas to help encourage reduction in speeds. But I think, Representative Lamar, I think, recognizes the need to have some outside pressures on enforcement. So I think that's why he's proposed the speed cameras as one of those tools. But we're continuing to have discussions with the Connecticut Police Chiefs Association, as well as others, about the importance of addressing speeding. We're actually also talking to NHTSA or to congressional staff about the need to have a primary speeding as a high visibility enforcement opportunity, because right now the big drivers in NHTSA funding are distracted driving, drunk driving, seat belts, but speeding is kind of relegated back and not a primary focus of NHTSA funds. So we want to make sure that speeding is up there with those other behavioral measures.
Mm-hmm. And one more question before we move on, and I offer this to Howard or Nat, either one of you, and Garrett certainly also contribute. The issue of public awareness. You mentioned public awareness, education, and training being a key component of this effort. What are some of those specific strategies? And you mentioned yielding to pedestrians in crosswalks, and I come from a community in Western Massachusetts where, for whatever reason, many people, certainly the majority of people, understand pedestrians and sidewalks, you yield. So in that environment, pedestrians feel very safe. But here in Connecticut, for example, our office is in Glastonbury, and I feel very nervous when I cross Glastonbury Boulevard. I had an old lady nearly hit me and then gave me the finger when I was in the crosswalk. So what about education and public awareness? What efforts, how do we educate people about the rules of the road, if you will?
Yeah, and it starts in driver's education, and I think we may have to look at what is being taught in driver school, driver training school, and at the DMV on their tests. But I think we at the Department of Transportation also have a role to play, where we do have federal funds to help in education. And I don't think we did a great rollout the last time we used our funds for vulnerable user education, where we saw some police departments ticket or try to go after the pedestrians who were entering the crosswalk or maybe jaywalking, where instead of issuing tickets, what we really should focus on is having the police just educate the drivers about what they did wrong, because they may not know. So if you have police presence there at a crosswalk, they see drivers not yielding for the pedestrian, then pull them over, just explain what they did wrong, have a flyer that explains the new laws. I think that could be impactful, but Nat or Howard might have other thoughts as well.
Mm-hmm. Howard, in Meriden, what experience have you folks, if any, about public awareness, education, et cetera?
It's really tough. I mean, you have to have a location that has high pedestrians. It's the big challenge is obviously if motorists don't expect pedestrians there, that random pedestrian is going to catch everybody off guard. So it's really a matter of getting enough people out and about and finding an area where you have pedestrians that you can educate them. But also, there's also a challenge with pedestrians. I'm a traffic engineer first, and now I'm a municipal, official, so I'm always worried about liability. And if the pedestrians think that they can just walk out in the middle of the road and have vehicles stop, and then all of a sudden I'm liable if there was an issue, I think it's a two-way street. Everybody that's using the built-up environment needs to understand their role. And I'll also expect that the motorist isn't going to pay attention. I think a lot of pedestrians just have an assumption that, well, if I'm entering, they have to stop. Yeah, that's a great assumption to make, except, vehicles are pretty heavy. So I think there really has to be a large effort on part of educating pedestrians as well.
Yes, good point. So with that, and we can pick up on that that topic later on. Maybe it's a good segue for Howard to give his presentation. If you could cue that up. Great.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Howard Weissberg, I'm the Director of Public Works. Missing on my resume was I was also somebody that worked for Joe Balskus at one time in my history, much like possibly many other people on the call today. So what I'd like to do is talk about the Pratt Street Gateway project. You have a nice screenshot over here. The goals of this project were to reduce speed, increase pedestrian access and safety, and provide an attractive gateway to downtown Meriden. Some of the things I'll foreshadow what we're going to be looking at. From vehicular safety, we did separation of lanes for turning and through traffic. We did median separations for opposing traffic, consolidated driveways. We built in a number of nighttime reflectivity features, including median alerts and LED stop signs. We also had 2 intersection realignments. From a speed reduction perspective, we looked at a number of traffic calming measures, including islands, textured pavements, and future sharrow placement. We plan on putting sharrows in here. We don't have them in just yet. We're looking to build a full bike network. From a pedestrian safety standpoint, if you want to head back a little bit, I'll point back to this one. We did provide we developed, we found in some literature, these offset medians for pedestrian refuge. We've offset the sidewalk, the crosswalks. That forces pedestrians to look onto opposing traffic. And we also implemented a number of aesthetic treatments. Next slide. So Pratt Street is a gateway to downtown Meriden. It's 4,300 feet long. It connects Route 5 and I-691 to the downtown Meriden core, where a police station is, where the park is, where all of our downtown services are. It's a 25-mile-an-hour road that can be, or in the past was comfortably driven at 43 miles an hour. We had a 60-foot wide, 4-lane undivided roadway, narrow parking lanes, and we converted it after the road diet to a 2-lane section with landscape medians, left turn pockets to separate turning traffic from through traffic, and got the average speed down to about 35 miles an hour. We completed the project in September 2018. Construction cost was a hair over $3.2 million. Next slide. So these are some before photos of Pratt Street. This is coming off of Broad Street. If you look in the upper right, you can see that it was technically Camp Street. It actually continued straight along the DOT access road. So people coming in off the highway would actually end up in a completely different part of town if they weren't paying attention, driving along the side of a DOT access road for their highway. So that was one of the issues. The turn that you had to make to stay on Pratt Street was designed for about 20 miles an hour, and people were going 42, 43. So we had significant off tracking. Further down the road at the intersection of Camp Street on the lower side, we have an intersection that was offset by about 15 feet heading southbound. This intersection actually had a signal that we took down probably about 8 years ago. Nature took it down. It was very old. It was a relic, but we ended up replacing it with a 2-lane approach with a stop condition. Obviously, with 2 through lanes, that created a significant amount of confusion. Next slide. Further down, we're approaching the intersection of Pratt Street and Mill Street. On the right is the former Mills Memorial Housing, Public Housing Complex. Straight ahead is that is the former site of International Silver, later the Meriden Mall / Hub, a brownfield site that was a key to Meriden's redevelopment. The brownfield site itself was one of the reasons Meriden flooded historically every 10 years. It has since been transformed into the Meriden Green. And as you go further down, you can see the green, but you can also see Pratt Street still being this 4-lane undivided arterial roadway that you can land an airplane on. So next slide. This is the redesigned Meriden Pratt Street Gateway. You can see that we have realigned the intersection of, it's technically Camp Street. We're actually in the process of renaming it Pratt the whole way through. But as you get closer, you can see that there's a landscaped median and you cannot go straight through. As we get to the intersection that was offset by 15 feet, you can now see that it is actually aligned correctly. There are there's a left turn pocket lane, there is a through lane, and we have a median buffer. Next slide. And now this is the approach to the Meriden Green, the award-winning Meriden Green flood control project. We have redeveloped the buildings on the to the right. The Meriden Mills Memorial Housing Complex is no longer there. That's actually going to be transformed into the next phase of the Meriden Green, adding another 4 acres to the park. And we have additional development to the right. That's some additional housing that has been developed. You can see that we have a left turn approach, a pocket lane into Mill Street. And if you go further down, that next slide, you can see this is, sorry, back up one more slide. This is a flush median island. We developed flush islands when we realized that we had a lot of truck traffic that could not handle raised left turn islands. We went with flush granite paver blocks. This is right adjacent to the fire station. They had a lot of concerns during construction, but these paver blocks have worked fantastic in terms of changing the texture, changing the color. They're paver blocks. They're not going anywhere for the next 100 years. They're a very low maintenance item, and they've weathered fantastic. So next slide. So as I said, the goals of the Pratt Street Gateway project were to improve safety by reducing conflict, reduce speed through our traffic calming measures, including islands and textured pavements, and improving safety for peds through the use of those protected medians, which will go in a little further. And the landscaping enhancements that we put in were the creation of pocket parks, low-level plantings, minimizing maintenance, and I'll show these in greater detail too. We put a permeable border between the curbing and the plantings to keep the plantings contained and not growing all over and causing sight distance issues. Next slide. Project was funded through the LOTSIP program. We had a budget of $3.2 million. The project cost ended up being about 3.24. We're in our final audit right now, and we're going to be returning to the state about $48 that was left over in a PO that I somehow missed somewhere. Project was designed by BSC. VHB was our construction inspection and enforcement, and La Rosa Construction did our contracting. One of the really neat things on this project is we also received a STIC grant through the State Transportation Innovation Committee to use electronic project management and e-construction techniques on this. We used a program called Appia, which I'm still using today, and I'm encouraging every consultant that we have to utilize for construction project management. It makes project management very transparent. It makes daily reporting very easy. We could go in from anywhere and take a look at project photos, take a look at daily reports. Very, very good program there. Next slide. So the project semifinal design started in 2016, was completed in 2018. Pretty much on time, worked out very, very seamlessly, had a number of construction issues that we were able to get with a very strong project team, get those resolved. Next slide. Here's just a typical median, typical section of the full median and the left turn. The left turn is actually a flush median now. Like I said, during semifinal design, we made that change. And we do plan on, we have wide bicycle, we had the travel lanes as 15-foot wide travel, 14-foot wide travel lanes to accommodate bicycles in the future. And here's just some examples of what we did, the realignments. You can see the landscaping in this median over here. Getting people off the highway, this presents a very nice first image of downtown Meriden and directs them down the boulevard to downtown. Next slide. Here's just some landscaping. It's great this time of year, now that everything's 3 to 4 years old, everything's really taking hold this time of year. We also created a little star space for public art, should anybody get the desire. Next slide. Here's an example of our landscape medians, and you can see the angled crosswalk. These are tremendously effective. We weren't quite sure how they were going to work when we put them in. We actually widened them to accommodate two wheelchairs that were passing. We realized that they weren't wide enough when we first did it, but you really have to face oncoming traffic. Prevents the pedestrian from blindly just crossing traffic without regard for what's coming. And once again, here's just another example of our layout. We specifically tried to keep all the plantings adjacent to the intersections and conflict points low to increase visibility. Next slide. And that's just another example of that. And let's see, next slide. We installed median alerts. These are little retro-reflective noses on top of our granite pavers, granite curbing. They work great at night. You can see them a mile away. And we did institute LED stop signs at our four-way stops along the corridor. Next slide. Once again, here's just a layout of our medians. We tried to have something consistent along the entire project length, just so that people were accustomed to seeing traffic coming. Next slide, and next slide. And you can see this is where we did our intersection realignment. All of these narrow areas are actually recessed flush granite paver blocks. And next slide. And you can see another crosswalk over here. This is to one of our big industrial commercial workspaces. They have a parking lot on the south side. So this is where we have our mid-block crossing. Next slide. And this is just a typical of opening up before we get to our median areas. We had a two-way left turn lane in here. Just because of the way the turning movements were, we didn't feel it was appropriate to put in an island. Next slide. And here's an example of this mid-block crossing with the offsets, the detectable warning strips the whole way through, and a very consistent, repeatable pattern of traffic calming. Okay, next slide. And next slide. And you can see how this continues all the way down. We have a very large manufacturer on the left side. So that's why we went with these flush islands, so that they still had a sense of traffic calming without impacting their operation. Next slide. And right here, you can see the median alert. You can see the granite paver block. And you can also see this is actually a band of FlexiPave, which is a permeable rubber porous product. I think it's a 1.5 foot band along the side. It provides a snow shelf. It provides our maintenance people an area to work when they are maintaining the landscaping, and it also prevents the landscaping from creeping over into the edge of the median. Okay. And Little Rendezvous is one of our famous pizza places. It's one of the best that I've ever had. We did not have a median break there, but we knew people were going to be walking across the street. So what we did was we just realized it was going to happen and put a band of FlexiPave through there to minimize impacts on our environment. And here's just one last picture of a median of our one of our islands with the Meriden green behind it. Very heavily used. Very effective. We've had very few fatalities. I do not have the crash data with me, but we have had essentially nothing since the project was completed 3 years ago. And I think that's it.
Howard, great presentation, great project. Congratulations. I have one question, and then there's one question from someone from the audience. So you had a significant reduction in the average travel speeds. I think low 40s to down to 35 miles per hour. That's significant.
Yeah.
And yet you have in some areas in your cross section 14-foot wide travel lanes in the anticipation of future bike lanes. Obviously pretty wide pavement area for traveling. What do you attribute the reduction in the speed? I know, you talked about traffic calming, but what specifically, what do you think was the most successful element in slowing speeds down?
Honestly, the biggest thing was it was a 4-lane undivided road with turning movements in both lanes. So you had a through right and a through left lane. What you had was an awful lot of racing. Just in general, if there was a vehicle in the left lane and you were in the right lane, not knowing what that car was going to do, vehicles tended to edge up on each other. And it was a wide, it was 60 feet of undivided pavement. So I think by actually just the visual narrowing of the road, and the ability, realizing that the car in front of you was going to pace you regardless of what you did, I think that has tremendously dropped down the speeds.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah, no, we were very happy with that.
And Chuck Carlo, I think this is from Chuck, and then Joe Balskus is relaying. I'm getting questions from Joe Balskus like through a liaison. But Chuck has asked, has the project seen an increase in pedestrians and bicyclists? Have you seen more activity, non-motorist activity out there?
We have definitely seen the crosswalk at the upper end where we have the parking lot on one side. The crosswalk is used all the time. Pedestrians feel much safer in the crosswalks. Down at the south end of the project, a lot of it is tied into the development of the green and having all of the features down there. But yeah, there's a significant amount of pedestrian activity along the road. Pedestrians don't feel endangered when they're walking on Pratt Street now because of the vehicle speeds. We had tried to figure out if bike lanes made sense. We were really trying to figure out what can we fit in that 60-foot wide cross section. So I think we went 8 or 9 feet on the parking lanes, but we didn't want to go too wide to narrow down the through lane because our fear was if we created a really wide parking lane, it may be utilized as a driving lane by some people. So we wanted to keep that narrow enough where it was always defined as a parking lane.
And I noticed you're not using RRFBs at the mid blocks, or they're just out of view, or was that intentional?
No, we did not look at those. I know there was the RRFB advertisement that came out, but what we wanted to do is evaluate whether or not these measures were effective in their own. If it gets more heavily used and we find that we do have a safety issue, I think they may be a viable thing to put in there. We have the LED stop signs, and I guess one of my concerns would be it's a lot of flashing that's going to be occurring over the course of the corridor.
Yeah.
But it's definitely something we can look at in the future.
Sure. Great. Fantastic. Hey, Joe, we'll just hold off your questions until until we open it up to a Q&A after the third presentation. So thanks very much, Howard and Nat. If you're ready, we'll queue up your presentation and give you the floor.
Okay, great. Thank you, Rich. Can you hear me okay?
Can hear you very well.
Okay, great. So just a brief introduction. I appreciate Rich reading my bio because it was a wake-up call that I need to update it. So my name's Nat Gale. I did grow up here in Hartford, Connecticut. I'm an engineer and an urban planner by training. I have spent the last about 12, 13 years of my career working in Southern California. So I spent about 10 years working for the city of Los Angeles for the Mayor's Office of Transportation, and then in the Los Angeles Department of Transportation, overseeing project development. And then I spent about 3 years as the office director for tool design in Southern California. I know tool design has got a presence here in the Northeast as well, before getting the call to come back home and work in Hartford as the director of operations, where I oversee our capital improvement program and sort of general interdepartmental initiatives. So, so it's great to be here with you all. Thanks again for inviting me. Next slide. So I would say, you know, the pandemic has hit the city of Hartford pretty hard, right, economically. And you know, I equate economics to the transportation system. And so I would say for our field, for the transportation field, you know, the pandemic has taught us two things, and two things that we've known for quite some time. Next slide. The first is, you know, despite the fact that we've had a drop in vehicle miles traveled during the pandemic, right, more people staying at home, we've seen an increase in pedestrian fatalities. You know, you heard Garrett talk a little bit about increase in speed. And, you know, so that's certainly one reason for this, you know, increase during the pandemic. But I would also argue that, you know, it's because for a century, the transportation profession is designed around, you know, prioritizing the efficient movement of vehicles, right? And so you're seeing the impacts of that when you have lower volumes, you know, that sort of exacerbates your outcomes. So that's the first thing. Second thing I think the pandemic has taught us, next slide, is that people crave using streets in new ways, right? We've seen slow street programs come up across the country. You know, I know in West Hartford Center, you know, they're talking right now about, you know, putting back some barriers for, you know, people eating out, people recreating. And we've done some similar things in downtown Hartford with a parklet program that we're funding right now. And so, you know, again, it's an opportunity for the transportation profession to rethink, you know, how we program design streets. So next slide. You know, how are we meeting that moment, right? I think it's a good opportunity to reflect on, you know, how we're meeting these two moments as an industry. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about how we're meeting that at the city of Hartford. Next slide. So the first thing we're doing is we're investing in safety, right? I think that's what this panel is all about. And we're doing that in two ways. We've got a Complete Streets initiative and a Vision Zero initiative. So next slide. The first is a Complete Streets plan, right? That we have actually in draft right now that we are putting forward for city council adoption that has some really important, you know, policy and design elements to it. So, you know, from a policy perspective, you heard Garrett talk a little bit about lowering speed limits. And here in our Complete Streets plan, we want to do a citywide speed limit of 25 miles an hour. And, you know, we know that currently we have to work with the state to get that adopted. But, you know, it's great to hear that, you know, there's state legislation that, you know, could allow us that flexibility. We think that's a really important policy, and we're, you know, thrilled to have some partnership with the state. We also, you know, in our Complete Streets plan, want to update our design standards, right? And look at some new, you know, progressive design elements like a raised crosswalk or speed tables, right? I heard earlier someone talk about speed tables in the city of New Haven. We're also, you know, we want to develop and adopt a design guide. So, you know, this is, you know, I would argue that starting with getting your policies right really then influences, you know, design down that sort of pathway. So this is a really important thing for us at the City of Hartford. I would actually love, you know, if the, you know, Connecticut ITE chapter would, you know, write a letter of support for something like this, because, you know, we have a difficult time, you know, sometimes with our policymakers, you know, convincing, you know, them of the importance of something like this. And you know, one thing I would also love to do is work with the state on, you know, can we adopt the Complete Streets Guide on state managed right-of-way in the city of Hartford. You know, I know that Blue Hills Ave in the city of Hartford, State Route 187 is getting repaved, and we're currently working with Mark's team on a, you know, a design for that corridor that, you know, reflects some of these Complete Streets principles. And I know Bloomfield is doing something similar. So we're really delighted again to have that that partnership. You know, we think getting these policies right again helps us do better design. Next slide. The second big program where we invest in safety is the City of Hartford is adopting and developing a Vision Zero program. I put this statistic up on the slide because, you know, this really tells us, you know, where we know that, you know, 7% of crashes, you know, where injuries or deaths happen involve people walking, they're significantly overrepresented in the deaths, right? You know, there's 22% of folks dying. 22% of pedestrians dying in crashes. And so, this allows us to, again, sort of rethink our policy mindset and shifting from a reactive approach to traffic safety to a proactive approach to traffic safety. Vision Zero really starts with doing a data analysis of where those pedestrian deaths and serious injuries are happening, and then designing your projects around where you see that heat map of crashes. And so you do want to take a 5-year data analysis, which is something that we're following the lead from the state, that what Garrett talked about with his pedestrian safety plan. Take a 5-year data analysis and then focus your design efforts, your safety improvement efforts around where you see those pedestrian hotspots. And so this is something that that we're investing in our next year capital improvement program budget. We've put a $300,000 line item, right? It's a small beginning of a traffic calming and Vision Zero plan, where we're going to look at traffic diverters to calm traffic and slow speeds, where we're going to look at raised crosswalks, where we're going to look at sort of quick build pedestrian safety elements. So those are sort of our two big Complete Streets and Vision Zero are two big safety programs that we're investing in at the city to meet this moment that the pandemic has given us. Next slide. The second area where we're investing in to meet this moment is thinking about designing people streets, right? I think our industry, again, for 100 years have designed vehicle streets, right? So how can we rethink and challenge ourselves to think differently and creatively about designing people streets? So again, I'll talk just about 3 current initiatives underway. Next slide. So the first one is something that I'm really excited about. It's an open streets program where we're modeling this off of Ciclovias, which is a program that started in Bogota, Colombia in the 70s, where the energy crisis met a public health crisis, and the city of Bogota started to take 10-15 miles of their streets and every Sunday make them vehicle free and turn them over to people walking, biking, scootering, rollerblading. And now in Latin America, in Bogota, in Mexico City, and Guadalajara, that happens every Sunday like clockwork. And this movement has taken shape in the States as well. And so we're looking in Hartford, is there a stretch of streets, our commercial corridors, where we can, one Sunday this fall, take 6-7 miles of streets and make them vehicle free, open them to people walking, people biking. It's an exciting traffic challenge, right? Because you'll have to have some crossing points, right, to allow neighborhood traffic to get through. But it's something that I worked on successfully in the city of Los Angeles, and I'm thrilled to try and to work on here in Hartford. Sorry, previous slide. Shameless plug. We're doing a scouting ride on Sunday, May 2nd. It's quite small on the screen, but highlighted in gray there. Sunday, May 2nd at 9 a.m. Meeting on Albany Ave. We're going to do a scouting ride to see that. So if anybody's interested, you can email me, nat.gale@hartford.gov, and my email's at the beginning of the presentation, but we'd love to have you. Next, one thing again that I've dedicated a career to in the transportation field is rethinking transportation as place. So we're really thrilled to have gotten a grant from the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving to invest in a community beautification program that looks at our bus shelters. And again, hats off to Garrett with some of the work that he's done at the state to allow art on some of the CT transit infrastructure. Some of the images I have here are actually from a West Hartford program that we're sort of developing our program around. And again, transportation, yes, is about getting from point A to point B, but it's also that place, that experience, at the beginning and at the end of your journey. And so this is an exciting thing for our field as well. And then next slide, I wanted to end with a little bit of a punchline. This is something that we adopted in our plan of conservation and development, is a modal hierarchy that puts people walking at the top of our modal hierarchy, right? Because again, when you get the policy right, that's going to change all of your design outcomes. And I wanted to give a shout out to the city of New Haven, right? This is a recent tweet from Doug, who's doing great things in New Haven, where they're looking at pedestrian signals, right, at some key intersections in downtown New Haven. And I think his tweet says it all. Like, can you believe we still have traffic signals where there aren't pedestrian heads, and that we still allow that as a profession? I think when you adopt a policy that puts a person walking at the top of your modal hierarchy, this type of outcome wouldn't happen anymore, right? And so this is something, again, I was excited to hear from Garrett that the governor is very interested in traffic signal improvement program, right? That's something that we need in the city of Hartford, and I know other cities in the Connecticut region need as well. So just to wrap it up, next slide, we know that there's national support for this, right? Pete Buttigieg at the helm of USDOT, when he was running for president, campaigned on a national Vision Zero program. We know that he's, looking at rewriting the MUTCD in a very, progressive manner. His deputy, Polly Trottenberg, was, at the head of New York DOT, and saw a lot of exciting design changes at New York City DOT. So we know that there's national support. Next slide. And, locally in Hartford, we've got great support from our mayor, Luke Bronin. Shameless plug, we're hiring for a traffic engineering services manager to help us implement a lot of these, progressive, exciting transportation, projects and ideals. So, if you're interested, if you know anybody who's interested, this is up on our website. I encourage you to apply. I would love to work with, some of the best and brightest, that, and I know that is, what ITE has to offer here in the state of Connecticut. And all of this goes to serve my last slide, which is really why I do this work. This is the outcome we're looking for, right? This is in Elizabeth Park in Hartford, where during the pandemic we made the central road vehicle free so that people could walk and bike and recreate safely. And I was out there this weekend and snapped this photo. And this is why we do our work, right? This is what motivates me every day. And so, again, I'm just I was thrilled to be given the opportunity to talk a little bit about what we're up to here in Hartford. And I'm really looking forward to working with all of you here. So that's it. Thanks for the opportunity. And looking forward to a lively discussion.
Thank you, Nat. Great presentation. And you mentioned Albany Avenue, and Connecticut DOT, recently completed a pretty impressive streetscape pedestrian safety project out there. What has been the community's reaction? I'm curious if, I don't know if you were here for the planning of that and the design of it, but what's the word from the community?
So I certainly followed it from afar. I just got back to Hartford last November. I would say what I have heard from the community is, when can we do more of Albany Avenue? Because it's been transformational, for the area where that project went in. At night, the lighting is just so much better. It's easier to cross the street. The businesses have appreciated. There are little things that we still got to get right, like putting more trash cans out, right? Like I think that's some of the natural evolutions of projects. But it's been a great project there.
You mentioned a proactive approach to pedestrian safety, which makes an awful lot of sense. And you talked about relying on the data. And I'll ask you this, and then I'd also ask Garrett if he has any thoughts on this. What does the data tell us? What are we seeing as the root causes, or is it a variety of causes for the increase in pedestrian related crashes and fatalities? Do we know what is happening?
Yeah, I mean, number one is speed, right? You heard Garrett talk about it, right? Even when the police report doesn't say speed was a contributing factor, we know that it was, because people are dying. When somebody dies, right, on our roads, it's because the vehicle was going faster than it should for those conditions, right? Plain and simple. There are failure to yield, right, is always going to be a big thing that comes up in the data. But I think that's why, and not to speak for Garrett, right, but the state is being incredibly smart and focusing on speed management, and it's something that local jurisdictions need to do as well through both policy directives, lowering speed limits, and design, right? Like design is the most self-enforcing approach to speed management, right? When you design our streets so that you go 25 miles an hour, we know that there are better outcomes. And in a Vision Zero world, the ideal Vision Zero world, there is no enforcement necessary because the design of the streets are self-enforcing. And so, that is inherent on our entire profession. The update of the MUTCD, what an exciting moment to get some, more powerful design standards adopted.
Garrett, are you on? And did you have any thoughts on the data from the state perspective, or is speed at the top of the hierarchy of the strategy that needs to be pursued?
Speed for sure. Unfortunately, Connecticut still is I don't want to say leader, but unfortunately, we are often in the lead in the number of drunk driving and drug driving, impaired driving fatalities in our nation. It's kind of shocking how poorly we do there, and how many DUIs are on our roads. And it's not, when you look at the data, when they do test their blood, they see that it's not just alcohol. There's almost always polyuse, multiple substances in the bloodstream. So that's a big focus of ours as well. I serve as the governor's highway safety rep for NHTSA, so I'm engaged in those discussions. I'll add the final pieces. Vehicles have changed. They're bigger, right? Much bigger vehicles. The way the smaller sedans were designed is the pedestrian would go roll over the hood. Now they go under the big vehicles.
Yeah. And you know, Richard, I'd love to say one more thing that the data says. The data tells us that our deaths and serious injuries happen on our arterial roads. And this is, I think, one of the biggest challenges for any municipal transportation engineer, right? I'm sure anybody on here has stories where the loudest complaints come from your neighborhood streets, right? They come from people who want a speed hump or traffic calming because people are speeding down their neighborhood streets, right? That is important, right? But if we're looking at outcomes, the majority of deaths and serious injuries happen on arterials and main streets. And so again, we're never going to not need to be reactive, right? We're always going to need to be, responding to, the people that we serve. And we need to create programs that allow us to follow the data in, fixing and upgrading designs on our arterials and major corridors.
So I have one more question for the group before we kind of open it up. And so if you're in the audience and you have any questions, just put your name and we'll call you and let you ask your question. Joe, you'll be first. You've offered a few already. But my last question at the moment is regarding concurrent pedestrian signals. And I thought I was aware, and maybe Mark could chime in, that DOT was moving towards more concurrent walk rather than exclusive ped phases. Am I right on that?
You are, Rich. Thanks for bringing that up. We made a decision a couple of years ago to stop designing side street green, which is where we do not provide a pedestrian indication, but we have the 3-section head. So we've stopped designing side street green. All of our designs that are not exclusive are concurrent pedestrian signals. And now we're working on a plan to start converting some of the older side street green intersections to concurrent pedestrian crossings. And as we work on our highway safety improvement program, that's going to be one of the focuses.
And are we concerned about, re-educating the walking public, the driving public with regards to concurrent walks?
It's definitely a main focus of ours because all of us who grew up in Connecticut have always had side street green.
Yeah.
And we've always had exclusive. So whenever we saw a pedestrian walk indication, we just figured we can keep our head down and cross the street. So through the program that Garrett has mentioned, and with the Bureau of Policy and Planning, we're working with Watch For Me CT and have developed an education program so that as we implement concurrent pedestrian signals in our projects, there's a complementary education program for the local municipality to get the word out.
That's great. That's great. All right. So with that, I think we've got about 15, 20 minutes for any questions or comments that anybody would like to offer. And Joe, you have some. You're not shy to unmute yourself and ask a question or two.
I yield the floor to someone else.
You got an award, and so we'll let you go first. No, okay. You had a question about I think roundabouts.
Okay. You got me thinking. So Nat had some good discussion about Polly and Pete. And I'm the vice chair of the ITE Roundabout Committee, and we've had this discussion. We've been having this discussion with Pete becoming the new the director. And there's the push of getting MUTCD canceled and rewritten, whatever, the focus has really got to be on safer intersections. And we really need to have from the top down, and FHWA is behind it, NHTSA is behind it, ARP is behind it, the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety is behind it. It's got to come from the top down that signals are good, they work obviously, but roundabouts are safer. They're the safest intersection control. So that's where it's got to start. Polly came from New York City DOT. New York City under Jeanette, what's her name? Jeanette Kahn, I forgot her last name, but she did a great job in New York City, but she didn't do any roundabouts. And so it starts with having better intersection controls where you're going to see a lot of safety benefits. You go to other communities, other countries, and the crash data, it speaks for itself. So that's where it's got to start. That's one proven safety kind of measure that we've got to do. We got to do more of. And I had a question before about DOT making a policy about considering them. I know DOT is doing more of them, but that's one big thing we can start and save lives.
Yeah. And Chuck Harlow made a comment in the chat, and I'll let him speak for himself, but this is a great topic. It came to my mind about, community. Certainly portions of our communities are going to be very interested in more walkable, bikeable streets, right? But what about maybe some of the broader public that, they're reliant on their cars, either from a town perspective or state perspective? Are we having a problem communicating the value of making our streets, more complete streets? Is it a hard sell? And I know I have a public meeting coming up on Wednesday in a town, and we're anticipating a lot of pushback from new sidewalks. Maybe Nat, you want to go first? What do you hearing in Hartford and other communities you've worked in? Is it a hard sell?
Yeah, I mean, I think as Chuck mentioned in his question, the data really shows this, and so it's incumbent upon us to collect the data, right? And I think that means data that maybe we're not typically used to collecting as transportation professionals, right? Because it's economic indicator data. It's working with your tax office to figure out, did business tax revenues go up in a particular corridor, pre and post, project implementation, right? And so, again, I think hats off to Garrett. I think he talked about, some pre and post data efforts being in that legislation, right? Mandating pre and post data. And I would just say it's going to be incumbent again on the local project managers to think about not just walking, biking, vehicle counts, right? But what are the other indicators that really speak to policymakers, right? Because I think, there aren't a lot of elected officials that, are fluent in, modal counts, right? But what they are fluent is what's good for business, right? And so I think that's the thing. It's getting us comfortable, it's a little bit out of our comfort zone, maybe a little bit out of our lane, right? But I think just as important is being able to talk in those sort of data outcomes as well as transportation outcomes, economic data outcomes.
And
Garrett, yeah.
Rich, I'll just add, I've been doing like 3 nights a week things with legislators and public meetings to talk about the Transportation Climate Initiative and some other proposals Governor Lamont has. And I speak to 2 points in all those meetings: is the economic benefit of complete streets and making up walkable, bikeable communities. And I spend several minutes talking to them about the benefits of roundabouts. That's not as easy as sell. I've told them all the multiple benefits, both on the emission side as well as on the safety side. So I keep driving it home.
Yeah, right. Well, I think it is an education process. People need to get accustomed to a shift in the mindset. And I think it starts with those, in public agencies, just to have a change in mindset. And I think, we've seen it at DOT and at the municipal level. Howard, a question for you on your project that you presented on. What was the public reception when it was in the planning stage, and did it shift or change upon completion?
Public wise, everybody had an issue with Pratt Street. It was a fairly easy street to build support for. Mm-hmm. Every community has people that are against everything. So you just stay away from certain Facebook pages. One of the famous ones, somebody called it the gateway to Big M Liquors. But Otherwise it was a fairly positive response. The biggest concern, I saw one of the questions about, had we considered bump outs? People were actually very concerned about snow removal and narrowing the road and what that would do in terms of access, because we took a road that everybody can get down regardless of the time of year and made it much narrower. So right now, the only people that really hate it are my highway guys during snow. It is a lot harder to plow than it was when it was a wide open road. So most of the opposition was long-term maintenance related, not operational.
Sure.
We actually just had a large project where we removed a ton of bump outs in downtown Meriden, mostly for getting ready for our conversion to two-way traffic, but also for parking reasons and maintenance reasons and things of that nature. We had a very poor response to bump outs. So making the shift to islands, I think was definitely more positive than throwing the bump outs in there.
Something comes to mind. We're having this conversation about, the city of Hartford's experience, where they're going, and Meriden, what you've done on Pratt Street. It would be so valuable. Let's say the town of Newington had a project and hadn't been done in the town before, but they could offer a case study of a similar project in Meriden where this is what they were faced with, something similar to what's in Newington, and here was the positive outcomes. That would be incredibly valuable. I don't know if there's a way to share that kind of project information, but I could see the value in that. So a question from Bill Skelly, or a comment about Bill. Bill, do you want to unmute yourself and just go ahead and offer it rather than me read it?
Yeah, let me try. Okay, can you hear me?
We can hear you good, yeah.
All right, so this is really good stuff. And we got to probably talk about things about it more often at this point. And Joe's probably a great one to lead it, not just the roundabout thing, but what we've seen over the last 50 years as traffic impact studies became standardized and level of service criteria became pretty regular, how to do the studies, all that stuff. And we've been using it. And what you tend to find is whether it's development or in an area, you do a sub-area study, maybe it's a public study, maybe it's a study relates to the private development. And we go through the same process. Intersection analysis, count traffic, do the level of service, got all the E's and F's, and the planning board or the planning commission sits there and goes, well, we can't have all these E's and F's, so we can't approve this project. Well, you need to mitigate. Well, the only way you get rid of it is, well, we got to add lanes, add turn lanes, add this or that, wide geometry to make the trucks turn really easy. And in the last 10 years, where have we been going? We've been going to Vision Zero, pedestrian safety, complete streets, make it safer and easier for all ages to cross the street or to walk along the street. Okay, well, we would like to keep this level of service E or F at the intersection instead because we want to add a sidewalk, or we want to add sidewalk and a bike lane, and we don't want to add another traffic lane. Well, I don't know, you're not going to be able to, the battle to sort of go beyond what we've done for the last 50 years or more, we've got to turn the conversation so the people who are sitting on the decision boards, the planners, and I'm not saying the planners are, they're for, they'd be for walking and biking and all that instead of just moving traffic. However, because they formed the zoning regs over the last 50 years, and the zoning regs say you need to do a traffic study. Oh, and here's the criteria of when there's a problem. And DOT also, not just CONDOT, but MassDOT and RIDOT, as part of their permit process, we're stuck with what we've done. So whether it's DOT, because it's very easy for the locals to sit there and go, oh, this is what DOT accepts. Why shouldn't we accept that? So there is a conversation, and the more and more we have it at meetings like this, the presentations were all great, but we got to keep the topic going and the conversation going. And DOT's got to change how they not only look at things. Okay, they have a pedestrian safety section. That's great, but they have to be forthright in changing their design criteria for doing an improvement project or approving an access permit. And the locals have to do the same thing. So somewhere along the line, we have to get it down to the minute little piece that, you know, City of Hartford sounds like their game, and they're probably easier to do than maybe some of the towns outside of Hartford who just, you know, they may not have, they don't have a traffic engineer probably on board. They might have a planner, you know, but they got these regs and, oh, you need to go to the State Traffic Commission. What? So anyways, that's all my piece. It's not a question. Maybe the question is how do we keep the conversation going, both at ITE, ASCE, APA, and DOT? I mean, we're all part of this.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, if I could just respond to that, I think it's a great comment. And I mean, I think Bill, you touched on both of these. And also I saw Matt, your question about, you know, mitigation efforts. I think it is, you know, it's twofold, right? There has to be some change at the policy level, right? When I was working in California, the state, you know, as the governor's office of policy and management, had just adopted a shift from LOS to VMT. So, you know, measuring based on vehicle miles traveled, the impact to our development as opposed to level of service, right? It's a monumental shift. And, you know, and I think that's, you know, certainly, you know, I think a good move for a good evolution for the transportation industry. But, you know, the devil's in the details at the local levels, right? So, you know, the zoning regs absolutely have to be updated, and that's something that we've done in the city of Hartford. But, you know, come on, there's a lot of engineers on this call. We also need design, right? We need design guidelines so that it's not just, oh, do a truck apron. It's actually, how do you design a truck apron, you know, that is, you know, safe and accessible and meets the local context. And, you know, when I was at the Los Angeles Department of Transportation, we hired Tool Design to develop a new, you know, progressive mitigation design guide for truck aprons, for curb extensions, for, you know, floating bus islands, you know, literally engineering design standards, right? And those, you know, I think that's where, you know, the planners sort of lose interest, but as the engineers on the call know that we need those, you know, to give to a developer and say, you got to build this, give this to your, you know, design engineer who's going to build it, right? And that's, you know, those are the mitigating efforts, a curb extension instead of, you know, widening the intersection.
And Nat, can I jump in just a second here? Because there's a great conversation in the works these days with the updating of the MUTCD. Well, what's standard for engineers is MUTCD. And when you can do something, when you can't do something, DOT goes by. NACTO, on the other hand, seems to be much more flexible and saying, okay, how can we make this work good? You know, like, so they're probably not as concerned about a liability issue as maybe the design engineer might be because he's been forced to be. But I just want to tie that in because there's a lot going on at the present time that I think where you're saying the engineers could improve the design standards and you know, what the feds do, what the feds say, and then how DOT interprets it. All good stuff. The timing is probably now to really sort of change the way we've done things, you know?
So yeah, it seems like it's one of those things where it's going to be a slow shift, right? And it's begun. And my experience, my personal experience at DOT and working with engineers is engineers are problem solvers. And you just give them the right problem to solve and they'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. So it really starts, in my opinion, with leadership and, you know, the shift in this prioritization away from solely motor vehicles, you know. So it's a rebalancing of the prioritization of the users of the roadway. So someone has posted a link to UConn, and apparently there's some case studies there. So thank you very much. I'm not even sure I was aware of that. Any other comments or questions? Just feel free to unmute and ask your question or make your comment. We're running close to the end.
Hi, can I just comment on the link that was posted? It's Melissa Evans. I'm the safety circuit writer at the T2 Center. And yes, that is a link that is actually to our Connecticut safety examples site on our page. We have several safety examples that run the gamut of roadway improvements, pedestrian and bicycle improvements, planning and policies that have been implemented throughout the state by various municipalities. They have, some have more information than others, but they were all submitted and collected by the towns that have implemented them. And Howard, we'd love to have the Pratt Street project on there from Meriden. The more we get on there, the more people can reference and see what's being done around the state and get some good examples for themselves. So feel free to check it out. And if you have a project that you think we should feature on there, we'd love to put it on there. So let me know.
Great, thank you. Anybody else? Any other comments or thoughts or questions of our panel? Ready for happy hour, the virtual happy hour? It's kind of funny when everyone's on mute, you don't get any reaction. I could tell the greatest joke and I wouldn't hear any response. So should I, it looks like someone might have just typed something. No. Okay, I'll turn it over. Go ahead. Yeah.
Can I say one more thing? Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
One more thing, as we were talking about, you know, kind of marketing and messaging of safety, a little shameless plug for myself here, but we do these coffee and conversations every month at the T2 Center, these virtual coffee and conversations. And the Safety Matters one that I host on May 26th is actually going to feature Jerry Roach from Federal Highway and Kevin Elliott, who's a consultant. And they will be talking about safety marketing and messaging, and some of the marketing and messaging that they are doing through Federal Highway on a lot of these safety measures. So that promotion is out. We sent the first one out this morning, but we'll be sending more promotions as we get closer. So always something to think about participating in. Just it's, you know, an hour long, and we will be talking about that very important thing. So just wanted to put that out there as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Nat, looks like Nat's got to jump off. Nat, if you're still there. Yes, you are. Thank you very much. Great, great presentation and discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate the, the Connecticut chapter opening this up to us, and, really looking forward to working with everybody statewide.
Great, great. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Any comments, thoughts, questions? How about those Red Sox? Okay, I think I'll turn it over to Carl or somebody.
I'll take it from here, Rich.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Rich, for moderating this. This was really a great discussion, and thanks to all of our panelists as well. Howard and Nat and Garrett, really great to hear all the cool projects that you're working on, and also the great initiatives the state is put forward here, all in the name of pedestrian safety. Great discussion, everyone on the call too. This really opened up a good conversation, and one that really is, I think today is only the start of the conversation, and something that we'll be focusing on the coming year in ITE collaboration with CONDOT as well. I think given where we're at here in the time, we're almost to 6 o'clock. We're going to do a little breakout social session here, but we don't want this to run too long, so I think we're going to hold that off to our next meeting. So, and just in closing, also wanted to thank or congratulate all our award recipients, our scholarship recipient tonight, and Jay Lockaby as well for getting elected to secretary. Looking forward to working with you, Jay, and thank you very much, Neil, as well for running again. And I'm sure we'll be hopefully continuing to work with you on the board this coming year as well. Our next event coming up, and Mark Carlino touched on this, is our golf tournament. It's going to be our joint tournament with CSCE. And we're looking at having that probably in the late summer, early fall timeframe. Just starting the planning stages there. So, look out for an email upcoming on that. But with that, I think that's going to wrap it up here. It's almost 6 o'clock. I really appreciate everyone for joining us today. Thank you to New England ITE as well, for everyone from the section who has participated today in our annual joint meeting, and looking forward to chatting with everyone again soon. If I don't see you, everybody have a good summer, and we'll be back soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Job.
Bye, everyone.